band with a smooth style of syncopation. Kansas City on and growing. You won't believe what the bars are blowing. You got to come on, man, and take a piece of Mr. Mother's band. Suspect something's wrong here. I dance in place and paint my face and act like I belong here. Throw back the little hanging with the mayor and all his friends, and nobody cares. Where the sailor shuts out the sunrise, blacked out on the stairs. Would you care to explain? Who is the gaucho amigo? Why is he standing in your spangled leather poncho and your elevator shoes? Audacious cowboys, such as your friend, will never be welcome here. High in the custard yard.
All right. Thanks for tuning in. You're listening to Gaucho Amigos. I'm Alex. Gonna get right to it today. I had a really nice chat with Lou Hayter. She's a London-based musician, and in 2021 she released her album Private Sunshine. Now, when I did one of these earlier Zoom conversations back in 2021, I was talking to a writer who kind of offhandedly mentioned that he had heard a really great cover of Time Out of Mind by Lou Hayter. So after our conversation, I decided to check it out, and yeah, I pretty much had to agree. This was good stuff. One of the better Steely Dan covers I had heard in recent years. It's not an easy thing to pull off, the Steely Dan cover. So I ended up checking out the whole album, Private Sunshine, and yeah, I thought the whole thing was great. I don't really listen to much new music, let alone something like her music, which is kind of like a pastiche of 80s pop. It kind of reminded me of early Madonna, or even the Human League at times. It's not fully my usual wheelhouse, but yeah, something about this album, I kept going back to it. It's kind of been in rotation since I discovered it. And of course, it has this fantastic cover of Time Out of Mind on it. So after a few listens, I at some point realized that she was actually following the account. So I wanted to talk to some musicians for this, so I reached out to her, and yeah, she agreed to do a Zoom chat, and it should come of no surprise to anyone who's heard how well she pulled off the Steely Dan cover, that she knows her stuff when it comes to Steely Dan. She is a hardcore fan, and so yeah, we had a great talk, not only about Steely Dan, but also other Steely Dan covers and kind of Steely Dan associated or Steely Dan adjacent acts. So without further ado, this is me talking to Lou Hayter. Enjoy.
Soon you better be featuring them at all, I wouldn't have chosen one of their bigger hits. I wouldn't actually have chosen to touch a Steely Dan record. It wasn't like an intentional thing of I'm going to cover Steely Dan. It was more I just heard Time Out of Mind and I was like, I really want to sing this, and I wanted to do all the harmonies and it felt more disco-y and I made it and I was like, yeah, it's good. I like it. So otherwise I wouldn't have gone there. Because I know how loved they are, I know how hard that is to make people happy,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
fans.
I know. I mean, believe me, I know.
Yeah,
um,
people be like, who does she think she is? But I'm actually making weirdly, I've been spending quite a bit of my January because I'm having a bit of a rest because I've been working like crazy for the last 2 years, like as soon as they let us out the house after the pandemic. And so I had a break, but one of the things I've been doing is making a mixtape of all like Steely Dan affiliated acts and things they co-produced, co-written, and cover versions. And there's some really great ones actually.
yeah, wow. Can you think of any off the top of your head covers?
Well, I think you posted the Pointer Sisters one.
I did, yeah.
Um,
I made a little holiday mixtape like a month ago, or I guess it was, yeah, whenever Christmas was, and I put some of the covers that I've found over the years, and
oh, you
yours was
you've
one of
done
the
one as
first
well.
few that I put.
Yeah. Do you know this one by Perry?
Is that the Caves of Altamira?
Yeah, yeah.
I did actually, yeah. It's not on Spotify or other streaming. It's
It's
on
not.
YouTube though.
No, it's on YouTube. Yeah, that's a great cover.
Yeah, that one is crazy because, well, I mean, it's the arrangement is really good, but it's also just surprising. I think it's the mixture of why this group was covering that particular Steely Dan song of all, of all their songs.
I recall when I was small, I was spending my days alone. The busy world was not for me, so I went and found my own. I would climb the garden wall with a candle in my hand. I'd hide inside a hole of rock and sand. Oh, yeah. On a stone in ancient cave, in a fading yellow brain. Made alive the world in wonder, often told but never seen. Now and then we're bound to labor on the sea and in the sky. Every man and beast appear, a friend is real inside. Before the fall, when they're running on the wall, when there wasn't even any Hollywood, they heard the call and they're running on the wall. You and me, we understood.
This one's quite good. Morris Mobley, The Glamour Profession.
I don't know if I know that one.
It's
Okay.
it's like sort of dancing and like almost cheesy, but then when you get into it, it's really good. And he's put a lot of detail in, you can tell. My friend Pete Fowler, he's I think he might have shown me your account in the first place, actually. He showed me those last two cover versions.
Yeah, he pops up a lot on the Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
he's
we're on a WhatsApp group and we talk like constantly about Steely Dan. I think we drive everybody else crazy on the group. So sometimes we have to splinter off to stop people getting annoyed. But then I've also got on here the China Crisis album that Walter did.
yes, I love that album.
Yeah, I would say it sounds like you've got my whole playlist. The one that Fagan wrote for David Crosby, which I love,
Oh,
Rodriguez
it's
for a
Rodriguez,
Night,
yeah.
and I've got Lazy Nina. Um, yeah, this is what I've been listening to.
That's great. Yeah, I mean that's a nice spread. Yeah. Yeah, Cross, yeah, because right, he passed away last week, which was
I
that
know. Well, I've had him on repeat ever since. I mean, I've pretty much had him on repeat anyway,
yeah.
but yeah, he's my hero.
Is he one of your heroes, really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, he was one of the few people I loved on Twitter, because I don't really engage with anyone on Twitter very much. I like your account, and I really liked his account too. Sort of on a daily basis, he was really entertaining. So I'll miss him, you know, that sort of interaction that he had too with his audience.
Yeah, same. I mean, he was one of the biggest Steely Dan proponents on the site,
Mm.
like just constantly talking about how much he loved Steely Dan and particularly Gaucho. Um, and just yeah, I mean, he eventually I actually this is a bit of a brag, but the last time I saw Steely Dan, he played with them. So I was there for
Oh,
him.
you were at that? Yeah, because I saw Michael
Yeah.
Lenhart. He posted that show the other day. Yeah, that looked amazing.
Yeah, well, I think he actually joined them on stage a few times, but I know that he in particular joined them on stage at the Beacon Theater in New York City for 2 nights.
Yeah, because it felt to me like towards the end of his life, he just wanted to either be in Steely Dan or make music that sounded like Steely Dan. Because there's that other really cool one that like Donald Fagen didn't write it, but it sounds like he did. Do you know what I mean? It's got a blue sleeve.
Yeah, I think she's got to be somewhere.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Which is amazing. I only just someone I think posted it under one of my tweets, and I was like, wow, so good. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it
like
does feel like he just wanted to be in Steely Dan towards the end of his life.
but his voice sounded amazing, like right up until the end. It didn't show as much wear and tear as perhaps you would have thought.
Yeah, it really did. And he says that in the documentary. He's like, I don't know how I'm alive even. But probably the reason because I think about it, the reason why his voice was so strong, probably because he just never stopped singing. Because, your voice is like a muscle, isn't it? And the more you sing, the better you are at it. And I just feel like that's just what he did, like for them all to be sort of harmonizing the way they did when they were young, it just feels like they just spent time singing all the time,
Yeah, I mean he
and
was
didn't stop.
doing it from a very young age, and yeah, he did it for
Mm.
most of his life. Yeah, I just watched the doc actually myself after he died.
Oh,
I
so
enjoyed
good,
it.
isn't it?
Yeah,
But
it's great.
you're right. His voice is like remarkably good for his age and like the amount of drugs he's taken and everything.
Yeah.
Gotta be somewhere soon. The book never lies. Across the sand of heaven to the land of blue sky. She's on a mission with a graphic twist. She gotta be. She gotta be.
That I'd been to this thing called Pitch Black Playback. Do you have them in America?
No, we don't, and I did want to ask you about it because I saw that tweet that you posted, and it looked
Yeah,
really cool.
so you sit in a cinema and they turn all the lights out and they give you an eye mask and then they play whatever album it is from start to finish. And my friend invited me to Asia because obviously he knew. And so after I tweeted that, she was like, "Can I interview you for this newspaper?" So, yeah, I think there's just a sort of wave of young Steely Dan fans coming up. And I was listening to because I started listening to loads of Donald Fagen interviews, and he was saying he thinks it might be because I mean, I said I think it's because of the warmth that they have, and everyone's listening to like very warm, soulful music. I mean, and obviously they're just brilliant, so why wouldn't everyone listen to them? But Donald Fagen thinks it might be because the kids now, maybe their parents were listening to Steely Dan when they were babies, and it has a familiarity to it. And he also wonders if it's like a sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Backlash against the sort of radio sound that's out at the moment, the sort of overdriven like EDM, whatever that's on the radio. He was saying maybe people just want like an antidote to that sound.
Right. Well, yeah, all the recording was done like in an analog way, right? Up until Gaucho at least, and that was just like
Yeah.
the very beginning. So maybe something about the sound. It's interesting you use the word warm because actually I feel like people accuse Steely Dan of being like kind of cold and emotionless. Like they hide all their emotions under
Well,
layers of snark.
I think it's more like that it's
Yeah.
perfect and smooth, but I don't ever find it cold.
No, me
It's
neither. I've
just
never understood that criticism. Like I've never I
yeah,
think underneath maybe the snark, there is warmth there and there is a beating heart. And I think that's what like, ultimately makes it all go down smoothly. And
yeah, absolutely.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean the revival thing, yeah. I mean there's a lot of theories floating around about why Steely Dan is like having this sort of resurgence. It's like there's a few bands from that era that for years were kind of on the like do not say you like them list,
Mm-hmm.
like thinking back to kind of like when I was in college, you wouldn't be caught dead admitting that you were like a big Steely Dan fan. Or Fleetwood Mac is
Right.
another one that I remember. Like
Yeah,
if you told someone
totally.
like you were a big Fleetwood Mac fan, they would like look at you funny, like what? Like that's
Yeah,
for old people are just kind of
absolutely.
like lame. Um, but now it's like there's no one bigger. Like commercials and like viral video,
Mm.
everything is like they're so huge again.
It's like my friend always says, the cream of the crop always rises to the top. But the other thing about Steely Dan is they're so enduring because of they're clever. There's all those sort of wave of bands that I love them all. But their Steely Dan have sort of proper store like Joni Mitchell, like proper storytelling. It's the foundations are in jazz, so it's not repetitive as a lot of the other bands are. So you can listen over and over and over again and never ever get bored because there's so much going on in there.
Yeah, I mean there's so much. Yeah, that's true. I mean there's so much complexity in terms of both the musical arrangements, but also the stories, the lyrics. It's
Yeah.
weird because it's funny that I've become like I'm such a Steely Dan head because um usually I don't care that much about lyrics when I'm listening to music. Like I'm drawn more
Mm. Same.
to melody and to like texture and to production arrangements. The lyrics to me are just sort of this like a lot of times I zone out. I don't even listen to what's being sung. um
Yeah, I'm exactly the same.
I mean, even before I really started to unpack the songs and trying to like decipher their meaning, I would like laugh at, the way at certain lines and also the way they were sung by Donald, his delivery. It's this
Yeah, they're really
interesting
funny.
tone that he takes that's like completely unique. So, like for example, Babylon Sisters was one of the first. Something about his delivery was so striking, and like it kind of made me just like I had a smile on my face while I was listening to him sing this weird song.
Yeah,
Was
he's
that your
very funny.
experience too?
Yeah, he still makes me laugh. Like, you'll just hear something new and be like, oh, that's really funny.
Yeah, I was just
Like,
struck recently. It still happens where I'm like, I'll pick up on something that I never heard. For the most recent one for me was on Green Earrings when he comes in
mm,
with the line Greek medallions, and that
right.
first word when he says Greek, he goes like Greek in this
Yeah.
completely bizarre way. Like I don't know, it makes me laugh just to hear. Like if you isolate him, the vocal of him just singing the word Greek, it's almost like a weird shout.
Yeah.
It's not anyway, I'm rambling.
I love Turn Up the Eagles, the neighbors are listening.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's
And also, Steely Dan fans, because you can be like, is there gas in the car? And they'll be like, yes, there's gas in the car.
exactly. That's one of the secret handshakes is that line. And
Nerd
yeah, the
chat.
turn up the Eagles. There's certain lines that are these little handshakes, right?
Yeah.
Greek.
When I heard Donald on this podcast, they said, what's your favorite record you've made? And he said, like, the last, is it Everything Must Go or something, like the last Steely Dan album, because he was like, that's when we'd finally perfected our sound. Whereas to me, I'm like, that's nowhere near as good as the ones before it. But that's the one he likes.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I've heard him maybe it was at a concert. I heard him either complain or at least state that he thinks that Everything Must Go is a very underrated album. Um,
Right,
however,
yeah. Maybe I'll grow into it
yeah, I
like I
mean
grew
that's
into
the least
Gaucho.
favorite among fans so far, I think. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
fans do love it, but it obviously doesn't have the
I
like.
think that's one. I might be wrong. He definitely said like one of their last albums. And I think it was that, but I could be wrong.
No, you could be right. You could be right for sure. Well, it's
But yeah,
interesting because also,
maybe we're just not there yet because it took me a while to get into Gaucho. It took me years. I didn't like it, and then that's when I first heard Time Out of Mind. Because after I went to see them, I then started finally listening to Gaucho, and now I'm like completely obsessed with it.
yeah, it's funny because Gaucho was kind of divisive, like again until I think recently the Steely Dan revival. Like Asia was always the most beloved, but I think Gaucho now kind of rivals it. I think that
Mm,
it was, I think people found it uh it kind of went too far into the smooth territory, like for a lot of people,
yeah.
how it's so like it's so almost like plastic sounding or I don't know, just very yeah, it's almost like uncomfortably smooth in this way. Whereas Asia, I think, has a
Well,
little bit have a warmer sound to it.
I learned from this same interview that that Gaucho comes from that Keith Jarrett song. Do you know
Mm.
it?
Yeah, I've heard that it was heavily borrowed. That Gaucho was heavily borrowed from like the Keith Jarrett song, and that he sued them.
Well, yeah. Well, and they had to give him money because, to be fair, you listen to it and you're like, oh, that's Gaucho with a but Gaucho's got a song over it, and then it changes a bit. But have you heard it? Because once you hear it, you'll be like, oh wow,
Yeah, it's a
that's
heavily borrowed.
very heavily borrowed. Yeah.
And then
Which
later
is
they,
fine, totally fine. But of course, but yeah, it's just I'd only just heard it, and I was like, oh wow.
yeah, and then it's a bit hypocritical of them because then they later took umbrage with the hip hop sampling of a lot of their
Everyone,
music.
yeah.
So yeah, a little bit of a hypocrisy there, Donald and Walter, but we'll let it slide.
Yeah,
Um,
I thought that too.
yeah, do you have any idea why you think, like what it was about Gaucho that you didn't like at first, but then later grew to love? Because I feel like that is a common trajectory for that record.
Yeah, it was the kind of smoothness of it. It was too smooth.
So why Time Out of Mind? Why that song? Just you were enjoying
I
it at
just
the time?
I felt like it had a bit of a sort of disco leaning to it, which I hadn't really heard in any of their other music. Maybe in Peg, I don't know. I just the beat, it's quite sort of like Billie Jean kind of sounds a bit like Billie Jean, and I was like, oh, it's got all those lovely harmonies, and I just sometimes I hear a song and I just feel compelled to do a version of it, and I try it out, and if it works, I roll with it, and that was one of those songs. I just as soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, I want to sing this. But I also have a vocal range that sits in a quite a masculine range. So
Huh.
I end up covering men's songs quite a lot because that's where my vocal sits. Like I'm not a very high ranged singer.
I feel like, I mean, and again, maybe you had a different experience it as the architect of it, but one thing I appreciated about your cover is you didn't just try to do like you didn't do it for accuracy. You weren't doing an impression of Donald. You weren't necessarily
No,
doing an impression of the
I
Steely
don't think
Dan.
I'd be able to.
Yeah, I mean, you took it in this like you isolated the sort of the pop deliciousness of it all, which is there. It's not fully in the original, but you kind of took that, like you said, you took the disco element of it and kind of ran with it and kind of transformed it into this almost completely different thing.
Yeah, yeah. I sort of built a new groove over it actually, which is quite irreverent. A few people commented on it on YouTube, but that's all right. There was a comment on one thing I saw, and it was this guy was like, "Oh, this guy was like, yeah, this is a really great cover," and someone wrote underneath it, "Oh, that's great coming from the guy that mixed the original record." And I googled his name, and it was the guy that mixed the original, and he liked it. So that was very sweet.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of getting, because you still get the textures of kind of like what I would think of as like more vintage pop music. So pop from like maybe the 80s or 90s. Um, I mean, it's
Yeah,
not,
that
you're not replicating the gaucho sounds, but it's sort of still evoking that era. I mean, how do you get that sound?
well, I grew up in that time. Like the first record I bought was Madonna, True Blue, and I just think it's in my. People say, "Oh, your stuff sounds like early Madonna." Not that I'm saying I'm anywhere near as good as that, but there's something in there, and I think that's just in. Those were my formative years, so that's sort of really with even like Stock Aitken and Waterman and stuff. That's what I listened to the first sort of 5-10 years of my life. So it's just in my sort of ingrained in me. It's like 80s pop music.
Yeah, it's in your musical DNA or something. Yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely hear the early Madonna,
basically.
the synth
Yeah,
sounds on yeah, like My Baby Just Cares for Me and Still Dreaming. It's like very human like too. I hear a lot
yeah,
of.
or quite Banana Rama, I think as well.
Okay,
And I don't try to do it either. It
right.
just happens like that. So
Right.
um,
It's all in there.
yeah, but that to me that's like the golden age of pop. So I I'm happy that I grew up then and I sort of absorbed it all.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I feel the same way. And but I feel like a lot of people try to do the 80s pop thing, but they don't succeed where you do succeed. And I'm trying to figure out why that is. Because you
Well,
maybe
there's
what do you
80s and
think?
there's 80s. I just think there's so many sounds of the 80s, because there was so much incredible music then. But you've got, say, like what the Weeknd's doing, and that's one side of the 80s. And then I don't know, there's just loads of different sides of it, I guess.
That's
I
a
don't
nice
know.
way of putting it. I don't know. I just,
there's just
yeah,
there's just so much to draw from.
yeah.
It's a mad time. You have like, oh, Superman by Laurie Anderson at number one, and now we never get a record like that. Or Ghosts by Japan, like totally mad records in the top 10. It was very brave and experimental at the 80s, I think, for pop music. And everything now is a bit homogenized, and you wouldn't get anything like that near the top 10 or
Yeah.
even near the charts. You never get those. If you play someone Oh Superman now, they'd be like, what is that? It's mental. And you think it was some sort of obscure tune, not something that got to number one.
The hand that takes. This is the hand. The hand that takes. Here come the planes. They're American planes, made in America. Smoking or non-smoking?
Yeah, why do you think there was more of a mass mainstream acceptance of something like that song, like Laurie Anderson's "Oh Superman," or
I just think it was a
yeah,
brilliant
or
time for
Steely Dan?
music. It
Yeah,
was a brilliant time for music. People took more risks. Maybe there's more money, and now people are all just following, because you don't make money from music that easily now because of streaming. You had record sales then, and everyone, not just music lovers, bought records and bought tapes and bought CDs. And they would be just your average person would be spending like decent amounts of money every month on music, because that's what you did. And now people just spend $9.99 a month on their Spotify fee. So there isn't the money and there isn't the risk taking.
interesting. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know that in terms of those later Steely Dan records, there was like a huge amount of risk taken by not just a band, but by kind of the whole process. So like, all of the people who are involved in the making of that record, all the session players, all the engineers, all the, the studio, the record label itself, just probably financially how much they invested. I wonder if that, that ecosystem of record making, does that really exist now? I feel like it doesn't.
Well, I think if it does, they make sure it's a surefire win. Like,
Mm,
this will hit these algorithms and this sounds just like that. So that will sell
mm.
to that group of people. And we've got a hit. But sound wise, I don't feel like in the charts there's much variation.
Yeah, because
But it's not to say they don't spend the money. They'll spend the money on the big players because they'll make it back, and the stuff that will sell. But it has to be a guarantee for them
right.
before they put money in. They can't afford to take risks.
I see. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Yes, I mean, I agree. I agree with everything of what you just said. One thing that I was just thinking about is I'm surprised that Time Out of Mind actually wasn't a bigger song itself. Do you know what I mean? Like the original, because I had never heard it until I actually sat down and listened to Gaucho, 10 years ago or whatever. Like I don't remember that one being on the radio as a kid. I know Hey 19 was, and I know Peg was,
Mm,
but Time Out of Mind wasn't. Are you
right.
also surprised
I
by
I
that?
mean I just wouldn't. be able to tell you because I just never heard them till
Yeah.
much, till I was 15, 16 years old. So when they were coming out, I just wasn't aware of them.
Yeah. One decision I noticed is that, which I thought was also interesting to make your version more of its own, is you did not include that kind of like instrumental breakdown.
You're not the first person that said that. Yeah. It's complicated. It's like, how am I supposed to shoehorn that into my version of it?
Yeah, that's probably daunting to take that on. I mean, it wasn't, but what I thought you did that was brilliant.
I didn't even think of that. I built that first groove, and then I was like, there you go. And then we were like, this needs a guitar solo. Oh, it would have been, I guess, sax or guitar. And then we just put the guitar solo on, and I was like, let's just let that run till the end because it's so good. Just leave it. I don't need to sing over it. Just leave it to roll to the end. And then it didn't really need another section. But yeah, that section would have been a bit complicated probably.
Well, in a way, you kind of captured this like alternate history version of what that song was, because other Steely Dan songs from that time kind of end with, or kind of the second half is features a big guitar solo that sounds, it's like in the same vein as the one that you included. So like I'm thinking of the solos on Kid Charlemagne or Peg. So I feel like the solo sorry, who was the guitar player who did the solo on
so that I got lucky actually. It's Jeff Wooten from Gorillaz. So he's Damon Albarn's guitar player. He was in a session with my other mates, Jamie from Claxons. They were all doing a project together, and I was like, would you just do me a solo? And he was like, yeah, no problem. So they let me come in very kindly and just play this. And then I started trying to explain to Jeff what I wanted. And I was like, so sort of a Steely Dan feel. Shall I play you a couple of... And he's like, no, I've got it. And I was like, yeah, but why don't I play you a couple of things and you can... And he was like, no, I've got it. And then he just played that thing like straight off the bat in one. And I was like, oh yeah, he's got it. He's good. So
he did that in one take?
Pretty much. I think we may have comped it. I think we might have comped one little bit out, but every take he did, it's like when you watch the Asia thing and there's all those great solos. Every take he did, we were like, wow. Because I'd never really seen him in that. I knew him. I've known him for years and I know that he's in Gorillaz, but I'd never really seen him in action. And we were literally like, what the hell? And yeah, he's amazing. Yeah, so I was very lucky to have him on that. Because that was the song done. Do you know what I mean? I didn't need to do anything else.
Yeah, no, I thought he nailed it. I mean, at least you didn't have to go through the process of like doing 1,000 takes, to get that. Like they did in on Asia or whatever.
Yeah. Martin, I must mention Martin Dubker, who I made the cover with, and he's on bass. Is he on bass? Yeah, he's on bass on it. Yeah, it's me on keys, Martin on bass, and Jeff on guitars.
Got it. That's it? Just the three of you?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, it's great. It's honestly, and I'm not just saying this because of, I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is because I was like, my sort of pantheon of Steely Dan covers, because I really do think they're one of the hardest bands to cover. I think it's a combination of the musical complexity, and also I think the voice is so hard to do that it just, when you hear someone else singing what you know in your brain as Donald's voice, it always just sounds a little off. But I think the best way to handle it is to just take the song in a kind of completely different direction.
Yeah, totally.
I thought you did that beautifully. So anyway,
yeah.
That's why I wanted to talk to you. I was like, okay, I want to talk to someone who pulled off the high wire act of Steely Dan. And
well, I'm glad that you like it, because that's very high praise from your account.
Thanks. You also you did another cover too. No, but you did another cover that I like, Pinball.
Yeah, do you like the Brian Prothero one?
So it's funny because I had never heard of him until, like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago on it was actually on my my Spotify Discover Weekly. That song just like popped up.
Right.
Or it was like the algorithm. That was one I have to give props. The algorithm found it and fed it to me, and yeah, I really liked it. And I was like, what is this? Brian Prothero, Pinball. And I don't know, I've listened to that song like a number of times, and then when I listened to
Oh,
your
it's
album, I was
stunning,
like,
isn't it?
it's so good. Yeah,
Stunning. I love that song
yeah.
so much. I just love it.
Got a call from a good friend. Come on down for the weekend. Didn't know if I could spare the time. I knew a woman who was crazy about a boy who was lazy, but it didn't work out 'cause they just couldn't make it rhyme. Hey Jude, you were alright. I could have grooved with you all night, but you turned your back on the party game. Yeah. Mama, if I keep my head clean, will I really have a good dream? Or will I wake up in confusion just the same?
Yeah, he says in it, the cat just finished off the bread, and someone wrote under my Instagram, what cats eat bread? And I was like, do you know what? My cat actually weirdly eats bread. He
Oh,
just ate.
really?
I have to put my bread in the fridge because he eats it.
So if you
He
leave
just ate,
bread out, your cat will eat the bread?
yeah, I just got a Turkish takeaway, and they give you flat bread with all your food, and I had to just go and put it in the fridge because he eats it.
Huh.
But aside from that, he wrote it for a musical,
Yeah.
and then I think he was an actor, and he just wrote that, and they were like, "Oh, this is really good," so they released it. But Brian Prothero now is like a voiceover narrator in the UK on a show called First Dates, which is like a reality TV dating show. And
Really?
that's what Brian Prothero does. Yeah.
I have no idea. I don't know anything about him. I think I've only listened to the full album once. Um, I was kind of hoping that there would be like, and it was pretty
Another
good, I remember.
pinball, yeah.
Yeah, but that song is just incredible. Yeah, and I really like your cover of it. I thought you did a great job. So
And I've run out of pale ale, and I feel like I'm in jail, and my music bores me once again. And I've been on the pinball, and I no longer know it all. And they say that you never know when you're insane. Got fleas in my bedroom, got flies in the bathroom, and the cat just finished off the bread.
But yeah, I like doing covers. I'd quite like to do a covers album.
yeah, what are some others that you might do? Do you know? Or
I'm not gonna say, but
you want
you know,
to save that?
they're nice to do because you don't have to write them.
Yeah, that's true. But
You
if
can
you can
do
kind
them.
of locate a different take on it, it's almost like you can keep it fresh. Like that's kind of my general rule about covers is if you're going for accuracy or impersonation, it's
Yeah.
sometimes it's a little, I don't know, like
Well, that's another reason that I cover men's songs because then it
interesting.
gives a different voice to it gives a female perspective to the song. So in it already, you've given it a slant and it's less of a comparison for you as a singer. Like, can her voice stand up? Because I'm not the strongest singer, but so I don't have to feel like I'm not as strong as the original version if it's the man, because it's just a whole different take on things. There is one tune I covered on my own in lockdown, but I don't know if I'll ever. I'm not going to say which one it is, but I have done another one
Oh, you did
on
another
my
Steely
own.
Dan song.
Yeah, but I don't know if it'll ever see the light of
Oh, come
day.
on. Can you tell us
Maybe.
which album it's on, and then maybe, you know, when I post.
No,
Yeah.
it's one of the early ones that's not on. It's not on any of their albums. You know,
Oh, is
you get
this?
the early
Oh,
years.
wow. This is a Becker and Fagan. This is a pre-Steely Dan. This is like there's all
but,
these
but
bootleg compilations of like Becker and Fagan, the early years. It's one of those, huh?
but I am toying with actually the second arrangement, just because
Yeah.
the second arrangement never properly came out.
Mm-hmm. It did not. Yeah.
So I thought, well, there needs to be a sort of finished version that exists of it, because it's so good.
I know. I know. Many have
It
tried, but
sounds
few have conquered.
it sounds like he just, like, that whole album nearly didn't come out because he ran out of patience. I think they just was so meticulous, which is why it sounds so amazing. But maybe they were just like, no, we're not doing the second arrangement as well again. I love the line "Ciao, buongiorno, baby."
I know.
I'd really like to sing it.
I know. You should do it. I mean, just really just because I think you could do it. You could do a pretty good job of it. I really
The
think
only
so.
problem is there is a range. There's a sort of low to high vocal range in it, because it goes up in the chorus, and I'm not very good with extreme lows or extreme highs, so I might not be able to manage it vocally. But I like, certainly the verses I just love.
Because it goes into a falsetto, I think, in the chorus, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love the
Which is
verses. Yeah,
not my it's not my forte, that.
it's not. Well, it's interesting because it also makes sense because you said the reason you wanted to cover Time Out of Mind is because you sensed a sort of disco uh, element in it, and I feel like even more than Time Out of Mind and more than anything Steely Dan ever released, the second arrangement has a disco feel to it.
Do you think?
I do think so, yeah. If you
And
listen,
you could probably bring that out of it, yeah.
exactly, which is why I nominate you to tackle to be one of the official tacklers of bringing
Yeah,
the second arrangement back to life.
tackle is the word. All right, I'll try. Rosie Vela Tonto. I listened to it and I'm like, I don't even know how they made that. It just
Wow.
sounds so good. There's
Yeah.
so much going on in it.
No, it's true.
And
You're
it's
right.
like weird. It's a bit like sort of Kate Bush, that album.
It is, yeah.
But her melodies are so unusual. The lyrics, there's words in there, and I was thinking, what is she saying there? And then I looked the lyrics up today, and she says Kinove, and I'm like, I don't think that's a word. I think she just said something that sounds good.
Yeah,
It's like a
well,
really odd record, but I just love it so much, that album, and I never hear anyone talk about it.
you know, I haven't given it enough of a fair shot myself. I think you've inspired. I'm gonna do a big because it's an essential album in like the Becker and Fagan saga, right? Because it's the first kind of creative collaboration they did after Gaucho, I think. Right?
Right. And
So,
it's Gary Katz, so
of
it's
course,
that's
Gary Katz
unusual.
too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
unusual.
gotta
But
listen to it. Yeah, I haven't given that. You know what? My bad. I haven't done
yeah,
it.
there's about five. Well, I just took two out: Magic Smile, which sounds like Steely Dan, and then
Okay.
Tonto, which sounds more like Kate Bush. But then today I was like, I've not been listening to the rest of this album, and I listened again, and there's like at least five really strong ones. There's one called The Box or something, and there's another really good one. But yeah, it's just all really sort of interesting harmonies and melodies and lyrics, but also the way they've crafted it is just mad. The sound that it's got.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it looks like Donald and Walter play on a lot of it, like Donald on keyboards. So it was kind of what,
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost
Yeah,
like a
you
half
can
of a
hear.
Steely Dan record. And a lot of the session players too are people who played on Asia and Gaucho. So there's a few.
Yeah,
Interesting.
you can very much hear
Well,
that. Yeah.
I feel like I'm missing a huge thing. Like just when I think
Oh,
I've
you're
reached
in,
the bottom, there's more.
yeah,
Wow.
you're in
Okay.
for a treat
Yeah,
then.
Elliot Shiner,
He's,
engineer, Bob Ludwig, mastering. Yeah, this is and of course Gary Katz. Yeah, wow. Okay,
yeah.
I
But
gotta.
Tonto, that's Tonto for
Tonto's the
me.
one I
And
should. What's the first song I should listen to?
well, Magic Smiles just sounds like another Steely
It
Dan,
does.
missing
Okay.
Steely Dan song.
Yeah.
And then Tonto is just, it's got a whole sound of its own for me, like the drums. That's the one for me.
Okay.
I'm fascinated by it.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. Oh, I'm gonna go listen to that very soon, if not
Yeah,
tonight.
enjoy. I'm on to the China. That the one for me is the China Crisis album.
Oh, I love
I've
that. I
just got
actually own
into
it
that.
on vinyl.
The
I
blue
just
one.
the blue one. I secured a copy, and it's
Yeah,
fantastic.
isn't it mad? It's like this band, and then suddenly there's little like sections where it's just gone into Steely Dan instrumental, and they're two sort of completely unconnected things.
Yeah, because like half the time it's like, okay, I'm listening to a kind of 80s new wave,
Yeah,
it's more along the lines of almost like Echo and the Bunnymen or I'm trying to think of what The Cure
exactly.
even at times. But then there'll be like
Yeah,
moments where I'm like, wait a minute, this is pure gaucho. Like that song You Did Cut Me, I feel like is right in
yeah.
the Steely Dan like sweet spot. So
I like Gift of Freedom, but yeah, I thought the same
Gift of
thing. I was
Freedom,
like,
okay.
wow. Apparently, it was done in Hastings, which is like a seaside town in the UK. It's quite mad.
Interesting. So
Yeah,
Walter
that's my
Lewis.
new. Yeah, that's my new sort of discovery.